Hi everyone, my name is Shazia Khan and today's session we're doing is on unit curriculum design and we're doing learning outcome 3, which is to be able to review the curriculum. Before I get on with learning outcome 3, I just want to give you a recap of the last session, which it was learning outcome 2. In learning outcome 2, we looked at the elements of evaluating the effectiveness of key elements of human resource management in an organization. We looked at the element of learning and development and training in learning outcome 2. We looked at differentiating development and training, identifying training needs. So what are the training gaps that are needed? And why it's important to look at elements of evaluation of the training. And also we looked at job and workplace design and reward management, intrinsic and intrinsic rewards from work. We also looked at the element of the motivational theory and reward, a series of job design extension techniques, the flexible organization, types of flexibility. We looked at flexible working models. We looked at the element of performance and reward and the different methods used, types of payment. We went on to look at elements of four core themes of motivation. We looked at content and process theories of motivation. We looked at money as a motivator. We went on to look at elements of transparency and also looked at training costs, possible benefits as well, and training versus development, what job crafting is, what job design is, and looked at the elements of motivation and theories around that, such as Maslow's theory, Hartsberg, McGregor's. Now we're going to move on to a learning outcome 3, which is to be able to review curriculum, why it's important to review any sort of curriculum and the importance of this. So the indicative content for learning outcome 3 is starting with elements of facilitating feedback. Why is it important to give feedback? Also looking at observation, monitoring of outcomes, evaluation, inclusion of feedback into a review cycle. So why feedback is so important and referring to that cycle of feedback. Identification of future goals and objectives resulting from learning activities. And strategies for reviewing the curriculum and people involved in the curriculum review. That's really important. So who's involved, what involvement they have in the curriculum, what expectations are they're likely to achieve and things like that. Key terminology. So what is curriculum review? So the main purpose of a review for curriculum is to ensure that the curriculum balances any sort of ambition, relevance, flexibility and inclusivity for everyone and make sure it's a process that's valuable for both individuals and the program teams. So, you know, it has to make sure that it meets the needs of the learners as well. And it also is sometimes it could be a redevelopment of a program to enhance any sort of student learning, engagement, experience and the outcomes. And it is needed because it needs to make sure that the curriculum is fit for purpose. So there's a link there for more information about curriculum research reviews. There's a link there and where you can choose your own subject interest and read around that. And it's a gov.uk link on curriculum research. So 3.1, evaluate the achievement of the learning outcomes of an education and training curriculum. So learning outcomes are very important and are quantifiable results of a student's learning that define the knowledge and skills they have acquired as a result of their educational experiences. These outcomes can vary based on the course or program, but typically include the following, such as mastery of fundamental ideas, improvement of particular skills, development of analytical and critical thinking skills, and real-world applications of theoretical concepts. So what concepts are needed? Learning outcomes are really important and play a crucial part in fostering student-centered education by clearly defining what students should be able to demonstrate at the end of a course or program. Learning outcomes shift the focus from teaching to learning. The approach encourages instructors to design the curriculum and instruction that promotes active learning, engages students in the learning process all the time. So, making sure that they are evaluated, that they have a knowledge and understanding of what they are doing. So, here's a step-by-step guide on how to evaluate the achievement of learning outcomes. So the first one is defining the learning outcome, making sure that they are clear and they are specific to demonstrating what the student should know or understand at the end of the course, like I mentioned. The second one is a select assessment methods. So you have different assessment methods because you need to cater for all learners, because you have different objectives as well, learning outcomes. It could include things like role play, exams, assignments, presentations, or portfolios. Thirdly, collect data. So implement the chosen assessment methods and then collect data on student performance. And these are things like what grades they've achieved, how they've achieved these grades. Make sure that this data includes the scores, the grades, because it's quantifiable and identifies the data. Then you analyze the data. So it's important that you identify what the data is and analyze that data according to the achievement of the learning outcomes. You then, number 5, step 5 is to compare data to the learning outcomes, whether there's a comparison, and you need to make sure that you are assessing whether the students have met the learning outcomes or exceeded the learning outcomes or either not met the learning outcomes. Step 6, identify strengths and weaknesses. So you need to make sure you identify areas where students have performed well and recognize strengths and weaknesses and where students need improvement in certain areas as well. Step 7, determine causes of performance. So explore the reasons behind the student's performance. Are there specific teaching methods that have contributed to this outcome? Do we need to change the assessments, or maybe they were, they're not the right assessment for that course? Number 8, seek feedback. It's really important that you get feedback from the students, teachers, any stakeholders, and it gives you an insight into the learning process. So how the learning process is going, whether, there's need for change as well, which is the next one, making adjustments. Based on your feedback, based on any evaluation, adjustments to the curriculum are necessary if needed. It could be changing assessments, it could be changing teaching strategies, it could be modifying the assessments to cater the students' needs, but these need to be taken into consideration in step 9 when making any sort of adjustments. Step 10, monitor progress. So continue to monitor student performance and the effectiveness of the curriculum over time. This is an ongoing process and to ensure any sorts of improvements are sustained. Step 11, communicate results. Share the results with the stakeholders, the students, because it is really important that everything is shared, and transparency is important, and make sure, everyone knows the results. Step 12, continuous improvement. So use the evaluation findings to inform continuous improvement efforts, make changes and refine as needed to enhance the curriculum and ensure that learning outcomes are consistently met. So throughout the curriculum, as you're reviewing it, you need to make sure that, changes are made, amendments are made, and any adjustments. So in the conclusion to 3.1, it's important to note that curricular evaluation is an ongoing and iterative process. The data collected and the adjustments made should be part of the feedback loop that informs the refinement of the curriculum to better serve the educational goals and needs of students. So there will be continuously changes, there will be reviews made. And, the process is an ongoing process because you need to make sure you are getting feedback and making sure that you are achieving what you want at the end of the curriculum. 3.2, evaluate the delivery of an educational and training curriculum. So consider how the curriculum planned and sequenced and it builds on previous knowledge. It should be also taught at a certain pace as well. So here's a step-to-step guide to evaluate the delivery of an educational training curriculum, sorry. Firstly, define the evaluation criteria. So here you will assess how the curriculum is being delivered, whether there are any gaps in there, whether the learners are taught a subject that they are finding interesting, and these should align with the learning outcomes, the quality, engagement, effectiveness, whether the learners are being taught a variety of subjects, so these need to align with the learning outcomes. Secondly, collect data. Again, use various methods to collect any sort of data and evidence related to the curriculum delivery. That could be things like classroom observations, student feedback, self-assessment, any sort of results that have been given that you could get feedback on. You need to collect all this data to find out whether, there are any elements of changes that needed. Sorry about that. So like you said, collect data. Then number 3 is to classroom observations. Conduct classroom observations to make sure that you are assessing the teaching methods, the different teaching methods, and make sure that you are paying attention to any sort of teacher-student interaction, how the class is being managed, the use of any sort of IT resources, and the effectiveness of any sort of materials. Step 4 is to student feedback. This is collect feedback from students about their learning experiences. Consider any sort of, elements that the learner needs to give you any feedback into if there's any sort of areas of improvement or any sort of how their learning experience is going. Step 5, instructor self-assessment. Encourage instructors to self-assess. Self-assessment is so important throughout any sort of curriculum to make sure that you're providing, you are meeting the standards of your own professional development needs as well, and making sure your teaching methods are effective and the learners are learning things. Step 6, assessment results. So analyze student assessment results to gauge how well they are performing against the learning outcomes. Assess whether the curriculum delivery is helping students meet these outcomes, or if it's not helping them, make sure you are looking at both. Step 7, analyze the data and evidence it. So carefully analyze the data collected, look at the patterns where the curriculum is succeeding, and if there are any challenges, make sure you are looking and producing this as evidence. Step 8, identify strengths and weaknesses. So identify any strengths and weaknesses in the curriculum delivery. Recognize what is being done well in the curriculum, and also, if there's any areas for improvement, make sure you are identifying them areas as well. Step 9, determine causes of performance. So examine the causes of curriculum development performance. Are there specific teaching practices, approaches that are contributed to this outcome? Step 10, seek feedback and input. So engage with instructors, stakeholders, students to see whether, that any input or feedback on any sort of teaching styles, and encourage the collaboration. Step 11, make adjustments. So based on the evaluation, again, if there's any updating to do on the curriculum, any sort of teaching strategies, opportunities that need changing, make sure you make any sort of adjustments. Step 12, communicate results. So share the results with everyone. Again, when we're looking at that, transparency is really important in that part because everyone needs to know what's been changed and how it's been changed, if there are any changes. Step 13, continuous improvement. So curriculum delivery is an ongoing process and it needs to be delivered, and make sure that you are regularly checking the curriculum to make sure that delivery is improved all the time if need be. If not, then continuously checking continuous improvement on the curriculum. So in conclusion to 3.2, evaluating the delivery of education and training curriculum is an essential part of ensuring that students receive a high quality educational experience. It also helps instructors and institutions adapt, and evolve to meet the changing needs of the learners. So every time you are going through the curriculum, you're making sure that the curriculum meets the needs of the learners, and as these improvements are made throughout the curriculum to make sure that, you know, the learner is achieving what they want. 3.3, identify areas for improvement for the education and training curriculum. So to improve teaching quality, start by setting clear measurable learning objectives for every lesson you teach. This will help in outlining what is expected to be learned by the end of the lesson. Having clear objectives will also help educators in designing their lessons, assignments, or any sort of tasks. So again, gathering information is really important. Data is a powerful tool for any sort of curriculum improvement, as it can provide you with the evidence of strengths and weaknesses, gaps and any sort of overlaps and any sort of trends. And you can collect data from various sources, student assessments, through observations, and you can use this data to analyze things. So, you know, if you want to compare, for example, student performance with national or international standards, you'll analyze this and coherence of the curriculum. So you need to make sure you involve, you know, make sure that you are getting that feedback. Review learning outcomes again. Reviewing the learning outcomes, getting curriculum improvement is a sole endeavour, but a collaborative process that requires the input and involvement of different various stakeholders, such as teachers, parents. So you can engage in different ways, making sure you are conducting focus groups to, you know, identify if there are any improvements that are needed. Analyze assessments. So again, data analyze any sort of assessments, whether there's if the learners are struggling with the type of assessment, you know, make sure you change it to prioritize, and, you know, make sure you change it to the needs of the learners. Student and teacher feedback. Again, pay close attention to feedback from both students and teachers. Are there common themes emerging from the comments or experiences? Do they need to be changed? How do they need to be changed? If there are any assessments to be changed, you know, get feedback. Feedback is really important in any element of teaching, because, you know, your main aim is to teach to the students' requirements, literally. So you are making sure that the learning outcomes you are doing, make sure the student is performing towards them and achieving. So you need to make sure that you are getting feedback to help you come to them decisions. Curriculum alignment. Ensure the curriculum alignment is aligned with the educational standards industry, and if it's not aligned with the standards and the industry, then make sure you are putting improvements into place, making sure that you are meeting the standards and the requirements of the educational bodies. Classroom observations. So it's really, really important. People don't like observations, but it's a way of trying to identify if there's any areas for development or improvement. And also, you know, identifying whether the teaching methods that you're using and the strategies in class are working. for the learner. You know, are they able to understand? Are they able to communicate? Are they able to respond to any questions you are asking them? Classroom observations and review instructional materials. So examine the quality and relevance of instructional materials, textbooks, if they're outdated, if they are, you know, if there's new for up-to-date stuff. Make sure you are making these improvements, because it's really important when it comes to teaching and learning that the resources that are used, especially books and instructional resources, things like that, are up to date and they are sufficient and they meet the learning requirements of the curriculum that you're putting in place. If not, then, you know, this is materials can be a significant area for improvement. You know, you need to make sure everything is improved and in line with the learning outcomes and the curriculum development. Review teaching techniques. So evaluate the effectiveness of teaching techniques and methods. Are they engaging? Are they able to, you know, are you able to engage with the learners? Are the methods used and the techniques used effective? You know, prioritize and plan your actions, you know, what you need to do. Next one is accessibility and inclusivity. Assess that the curriculum that you are developing is inclusive, and make sure it engages learners from different areas, diverse, you know, needs, but make sure you are including things like, you know, if the learners have different disabilities, make sure you are taking them into account when designing the curriculum. Make sure it's inclusive. Make sure you are making it accessible to learners with disabilities. Make sure that you are taking the diverse learning needs into account when looking at the curriculum. Technology and integration. Review how technology is integrated into the curriculum. Are there opportunities to use more effectively to enhance any sort of learning? Make sure that you are considering integrating curriculum innovation if need be, and introducing new technologies, methods of resources, or providing learning opportunities for teachers if you are integrating new technology. Make sure that your teachers are trained to use that new technology. Continuous professional development. Another really important part of professional development, consider the professional development of your teachers, your instructors, your learners. Can they benefit from any other training? You know, monitor, implement. Stakeholder input, so seek information from relevant stakeholders, students, faculty, administrators, and industrial experts. Their perspectives can be really valuable into needs of improvement if there's any improvements that need to be made. Monitor and implement, you know, you can also use tools as checklists, rubrics, or portfolios to track the progress and outcomes, and communicate channels through, you know, newsletters as well. You know, make sure you are making sure that you are taking others' perspectives into account. Prioritize improvement areas. So once you've collected and analysed all your data and feedback, prioritize the areas that need improvement. If there are any areas that need improvement, make sure that you are checking on them areas and making sure you are fostering a culture of improvement and innovation, making sure that you are your curriculum are meeting the standards and expectations of the stakeholders and societies and the learners out there. Make sure you are taking that into account, because that is really important when it comes to elements of the curriculum. You know, you need to make sure you are improving the areas and taking on board the feedback and data that is provided to you, because that's the most important thing. That feedback is giving you identification of what you need to do and how you need to make the curriculum more effective. Develop improvement plans. So create detailed improvement plans for each identified area. and timelines and resources and all these areas need to be taken into consideration. Implement change, so act and review and monitor and implement these changes to the curriculum to make sure that the curriculum has been improved, and this will be through the feedback and data you have got together. Monitor progress, so continuously monitor and assess the impact of changes. So within curriculum design, there is continuous improvements and monitoring and reviewing all the time to make sure that the outcomes are better suited to the students. Reflect and adapt, so periodically revisit the evaluation process to reflect on any changes made and adapt further as needed. Curriculum improvement is an ongoing process. As we mentioned, it's not something that stops. You have to review and reflect on it all the time and make sure if there are any improvements to make these improvements as you go along. So in conclusion, through 3.3, by following these steps and involving key stakeholders, you can systematically identify and address areas for any improvements in education and training curriculum. Ultimately, the whole point of this is to enhance the learning experience of the learners and make sure that they are following the elements of the learning outcomes, and make sure that they are reiterating any sort of changes that have been made, and make sure you as an individual are identifying these changes to them learners. So now we're going to go on to 3.4, is to make improvements to education, training and curriculum. And so making improvements to an education and training curriculum involves a systematic process of reviewing, planning, implementing and evaluating changes to enhance the quality and the effectiveness of the curriculum. So making sure that changes are put in place so that the curriculum is effective, and make sure that you are reviewing the curriculum, as we mentioned earlier, and making sure you are developing any sort of training needs for the teachers and stakeholders. So first one is identifying areas of improvement, and begin by conducting a thorough review of current curriculum, analyze results, feedback from students and instructors, and assess the alignment of the curriculum with learning outcomes. Identify specific areas where improvements are needed, such as learning outcomes, maybe the teaching methods, materials, resources. Evaluating courses can improve the experience for students and instructors, and consider the structure of it as well. So evaluating the areas that need improving is really important. Set goals and objectives. So make sure that there are clear goals and objectives in place that you can set to achieve these improvements. And these objectives will have a mission at the end of it, which we'd identify during the evaluation. So make sure you are setting your clear goals and make sure you are able to meet these goals and objectives that you have set. Create an improvement plan. So develop a well-structured plan which outlines any sort of strategies that you're going to do and any actions that you're going to take to implement these improvements, to make sure that these improvements are put in place, and make sure that you have set yourself a realistic time frame to identify and allocate any sort of necessary resources to make these improvements. Prioritize changes. So make sure you are prioritizing the importance of areas of improvement and prioritizing them based on potential impact on student learning. Focus on changes and bring the most significant positive effects. So make sure you are focusing on any sort of changes. Make sure you have taken into account the impact on student learning and the feedback to identify and prioritize these changes. Curriculum alignment, so ensure that the curriculum is aligning with the relevant education standards, industry requirements and best practice. So make sure that you are put in place that the curriculum is being designed in elements of making sure that you are meeting the standards and requirements of the necessary bodies, and making sure that you are up to date with any sort of curriculum knowledge and expectation. Review learning outcomes. So revise and refine the learning outcomes as needed to ensure they are clear, measurable, and attainable. Learning outcomes should accurately reflect the knowledge and skills students are expected to acquire. So make sure you are, you know, identifying what the learning outcomes are, why they are so important, and why there's a need for change in regards to the learning outcomes. Also, update instructional materials. Make sure your material you've got is up to date, and make sure that you are the material you have is up to date. Textbooks, it may be resources around elements of instructional materials. Make sure they are up to date, they are engaging for the learner, and make sure that that you have taken into account any sort of areas that need enhancing to achieve curriculum, and incorporate new resources as well. It's so important when it comes to curriculum design that you incorporate new courses, sorry, resources if need be. Enhancing teaching methods. So again, enhancing teaching methods is really important. So you need to make sure that you are looking at enhancing any sort of teaching methods, enhancing teaching methods. So if you are making sure you are getting the learners involved, making sure that the sessions are active, making sure that the learning experience for the learner helps them, understand things, and develop their knowledge of the subject area, making sure that the learning environment is positive, and making sure that if you are providing any support to help them adopt these models that, methods that are needed. Accessibility and inclusivity, and this is really important element of it in regards to making sure that the curriculum is accessible to all, but with learning disabilities, and making sure that it's inclusive, that the inclusivity, there's an inclusive learning environment, because everyone is different and we need to make sure we cater for everyone in the curriculum, and make sure it's diverse. Technology integration, so leverage educational technology, enhance the curriculum delivery, sorry, making sure that, we are if we are introducing new tools within the class and new platforms, that they can facilitate the engagement process for learners, but also that we, as the instructors, are able to, make sure that make sure that they are able to understand the new e-learning tools, make sure that they are better engaged, make sure they're engaged in the learning process, make sure that the curriculum, you are enhancing the curriculum development. Continuous professional development, again, this is really important to make sure that the instructors are up to date and are able to improve their teaching skill, and make sure that they're up to date and stay up to date with the latest educational practices and any sort of technology, new technology to inform that. So make sure that you are up to date. Make sure that you have teaching skills in place, but also your CPD training development for teachers is in place, because it needs to be, if there are new technologies come into place, sometimes teachers don't know how to use them, so you need to make sure they are trained well to develop these. Student engagement is really important part of curriculum development, to make sure that um, foster student engagement or any active learning, encourage students to play an active role in their learning, make sure you are getting them involved, making sure that, they have fostering the student engagement into active learning is really good. Monitoring and evaluating progress, so continuously monitor the progress of improvements by collecting data, seeking feedback from assessors, instructors, students, and it helps if there's any areas for improvements or further areas for any adjustments. This feedback will help you, and it's continuous process where it'll be, continuously monitored. Adapting and revising, so be flexible and open to adapting and revising the improvement plan based on feedback. So collecting any sort of feedback that's been collected during the duration of the time, embracing changes to make sure it's, improved for the learner as well. These kind of changes need to be put in place so that it improves the learning environment, and making sure that the curriculum is designed for the individual, the learner. You need to make sure that there's consistency, and new skills are being developed, because it's really important. Communicate changes effectively. So, making sure that, the changes that have been made are communicated to stakeholders, the students, and then any sort of, stakeholders, ensuring any sort of transparency, within that, making sure that you are, uh, you know, making sure that everyone knows what changes are put in place, and or what you've achieved, why you've made these changes, and making sure that the curriculum is designed according to, the students' needs and the learning outcomes. Assess the impact, so evaluate the impact of the improvements on student learning outcomes, teaching effectiveness, and overall quality curriculum. Using data and feedback to gauge this, so it's really important that you make sure you assess the impact of these changes, because sometimes they may work, but sometimes they may not work. So you need to be reflecting on that more. The whole point and the importance of curriculum planning is it provides a guide by supplying learning outcomes along with the activities designed to help achieve these outcomes. And it serves as a framework for the reference for the teacher, and ensures that the teacher delivers the appropriate content effectively to the students. So, making sure you're assessing these impact of the changes that you've made and making sure they are working as well. The whole point of curriculum is to provide consistency of standards and ensure that there's instructions between classes, and make sure that that every learner is that the teaching and learning, is meeting the requirements of the learning outcomes. The next one is to commit to continuous improvement. And again, this is really important when it comes to curriculum, continuous improvement of curriculum, continuous improvement. So making sure that everyone is up to date, making sure there's regular revisits to the curriculum all the time. So you're creating a curriculum where you're mapping the content against the learning outcome, making sure that you're developing a course and building the course, and making sure that the learning outcomes are met with assessment strategies, exercises, interactive activities. And you need to be continuously checking that and monitoring that, and making sure that the curriculum is working. And the whole point of the curriculum design is to deepen learning and support for students in gaining an understanding of certain areas that they want to enhance on. So continuous feedback is really important, and you making sure that the strategies and the changes you've put in place are being met, but also that there's an improvement in maybe assessments, there's improvement in grades, there's an improvement in data. So if a curriculum is being changed, you need to make sure that the changes are working. So that's why it's responsive. It remains responsive to changing needs and best practices. It's always good to, make changes to the curriculum all the time. And it does impact on the curriculum. It may be that, areas of assessment need changing. It may be that things are outdated. It may be that, the teaching methods are not working. It may be that the assessment methods are not working. And it may be that, that, there needs to be a change in the learning environment as well. And this needs to be monitored all the time. And it's best it's monitored all the time because, you are mapping to a strategic vision. You're building the team, you're providing opportunity for feedback. And when you get feedback, it helps. So, in response to 3.4, in conclusion, by following this narrative approach, you can systematically and effectively make improvements to an education and training curriculum, ensuring that it remains aligned with educational goals and serves the evolving needs of student and educational design. So it's, making sure that everything is, you know, uh, everything is put in place, making sure that, there's a system where we continuously improve the education and training systems. We review it, we plan, we implement, making sure that we are identifying if there's any areas of improvement, how we can change these areas of improvement. So, this is an area where it needs to be, for curriculum deniers, there needs to be continuous improvement to make sure that we are meeting the standards of the educational community, but also we are aligning the goals, the learning outcomes with the goals and the improvements that we are making. So, in regards to learning outcome 3, we finished learning outcome 3 now, and the next learning outcome will be the assignment discussion, which is the final thing, and then you can get on with the assignment. So just to summarize what we've done in today's session. So we've looked at learning outcome 3, which is being able to review a curriculum. We've looked at facilitating feedback, observation, we've looked at monitoring of outcomes, we've looked at evaluation, inclusion of outcomes, the review cycle, we've looked at evaluating the achievement of the learning outcomes of educational training, we looked at the different steps guide to evaluate the achievement of the learning outcomes. We also looked at elements of 3.2 to evaluate the delivery of an education and training curriculum, and looked at a step-by-step guide on how to evaluate the delivery of an educational training requirement. We looked at defining the educational needs. We then went on to look at 3.3, which was to identify any areas for improvement for education and training curriculum, and we looked at elements of gathering feedback and analysing the data, curriculum alignment. We looked at observation, classroom observations, why they're so important in regards to curriculum design. We then went on to reviewing teaching techniques and looked at accessibility and inclusivity and the integration of technology within an element of a curriculum design. We also looked at continuous professional development and prioritise improvement areas, and developing plans that need to be put in place to change the curriculum, and monitoring and reviewing these plans as well. We then went on to look at 3.4, which was make improvements to education and training curriculum, and identified areas of improvement, why they were needed and why there needs to be areas of improvement that need to be put in place. We looked at elements of setting clear goals and objectives and creating an improvement plan. We looked at prioritizing change, curriculum alignment, and reviewing learning outcomes, updating instruction materials, and enhancing teaching methods. And we also looked at elements of accessibility and inclusion within 3.4 as well, technology integration and continuous professional development, why that is needed in regards to educational needs. We looked at the importance of student engagement when giving feedback and why feedback is so important when we're evaluating and monitoring any sort of any progress, why we need to monitor it all the time. We looked at adapting and revising, and then we went on to look at communicating the changes and looking at continuous improvement within the curriculum. These are some of the references we've used for today's session. So you can refer to these for any sort of additional reading. these recorded learning outcome 1, 2, and now 3, what we've done today, are all recorded sessions, and they are all put on Moodle for you to have a look at. And the session on assignment discussion will also be recorded. So please refer to them sessions to help you and support and guide you through working around what you need to do for your assignment, okay? Plenary, make sure you are referring again to ebooks and any journals, any additional reading that is on Moodle for you. And there's a link to any sort of further reading on Moodle for you. And if you have any questions or any queries around the element of curriculum design, please email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, and submission of the assignment is 2 weeks after the assignment discussion, and it will be submitted on learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. So this is the end of learning outcome 3. The next session is assignment discussion session, which I'll see you. Thank you for attending today's session.